Good evening, class.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Okay, so you have in front of you a mini whiteboard with your own special dry erase marker, and I'm going to give you 1 minute, and I would like for you to write down all of the prefixes or suffixes that you can think of. So I'm going to start the timer, and you have 1 minute. So just try to think about maybe some English words that you know that use like a prefix or a suffix, and maybe like, adding them to a root word. Can you think of that kind of thing? Alrighty, it's okay if you can't right now because we'll refresh our minds about it in just a second, but I'll start the timer.
You said and suffixes?
Prefixes or suffixes. And if writing out a word might help you, then you can totally do that too, and we'll just break those apart. It's tricky to think of them on the spot, I know. Yeah. 10 seconds.
Sorry.
All right. Okay, so can some of you share maybe some of the terms that you came up with? Anybody have any that they want to share with the class? Sean, what do you got?
So, for prefixes, I had like
Okay.
and re, like re, and a.
Okay, awesome. Eileen, do you have maybe one you want to share with us?
I have for stuff like just
Either one.
Okay, for suffixes, I have ing and ed.
Awesome. Excellent. Noah, do you got any for us?
Prefixes, I have pre, so pre, then x, and pro.
Okay.
And then for suffixes, I have s, ing, and ed.
Perfect. You guys all came up with some different ones, which is awesome, awesome, awesome. So that was kind of to refresh our memories a little bit about what we've been talking about in previous classes about prefixes, suffixes, and root words in English. So you guys are professional language users. You guys know all about the English language. But sometimes it's kind of hard to break down words into the prefixes, root words, and suffixes. So, but we definitely use those every single day. In every sentence we say, a lot of times there's going to be a prefix or a suffix, and it changes the meaning of the root word. So it's a really important thing that we've been looking at. But today we're going to transition into something a little bit different. Before we do that, we'll just go over some more examples. You guys brought up a lot of these prefixes and suffixes, and I'm just going to give you some more examples to get your mind thinking in that again. So let's look at the word untie. Can anybody recognize a prefix in that word? Yes, Eileen. Un. Awesome. So un is our prefix in this one. And what does that mean?
Not like to undo.
Awesome. So literally untie means not tied. So un would be not. The same prefix is used in this word. Can someone tell me what the definition might be? If we have the prefix of un, and then add it with locked.
Not locked.
Not locked. Perfect. Okay, let's move on to some suffixes. What about this one? Can anybody identify the suffix? Yeah, Sean.
Full.
Full. Awesome. And what do we think the definition of that is going to be? Yeah, Noah.
Full of fear.
Full of fear. That is so perfect. You guys are awesome at this. So while we're looking through these, so we have our prefixes, and then we have our suffixes, and we also have our root word. So in these particular examples, this is a full root word. So this word can stand by itself. That's why it's called a root word. What we're going to look at a little bit later is we're just going to have roots. So they don't necessarily stand by themselves. They always need a prefix or a suffix to give them more definition. One more in this same type of suffix category. Can anybody tell me the suffix in this one? Yeah, an FUL. Awesome. And what do we think the definition of this one's going to be?
Full of beauty.
Full of beauty. Awesome. You guys are great at this. Okay, so like I said, root words are the actual word that the prefix and the suffixes are tied to. So we just went over this. In untie, we had tie, unlock, lock, fearful, fear, and beautiful, beauty. Everybody think they got a good grasp on that? Thumbs up or thumbs down or in the middle? Thumbs up, that's what we like to see. Okay, so we have refreshed our knowledge a little bit about these prefixes, root words, and suffixes. And today we're going to use that knowledge to learn some medical terminology. So it's kind of intimidating maybe a little bit, but it'll be pretty easy once you get into it. Okay, so I'm going to hand out to you the listing of the different prefixes, roots, and suffixes that we're going to be going over today. So I'm going to start with the prefixes. Let's look at the first one on the list. So we have diplo, which by definition means double, twice, or I think you guys have one extra, twin. Okay, so maybe you can think of an example in your head where you've seen the word or the prefix diplo used in conjunction with a root to make a new word. Epi, and a lot of these you may be familiar with, other ones you may have never heard of before. So this one is epi, which is on or upon. Hypo, which is under or beneath. And then peri, which is around. So one of the things that immediately I thought of when I read epi was epiglottis. Is anybody familiar with that part of your body? It's in your mouth. I sometimes refer to it as like the little punching bag at the back of your throat. The little thing that's hanging down, that's your epiglottis. So that is on your larynx. And we will see later in our root words, glottis is actually the root for something pertaining to the larynx. So epiglottis would be on the larynx. Does that make sense? Just one example of how we would use a prefix in one of our medical roots. We're going to skip the roots and come right back to them. We're going to do suffixes first. So ectomy would be the removal of something. So if we had, we'll kind of conjoin these in a minute with you have some practice for study time, that kind of thing. But just try to, when you're reading through this list and when I'm going over them, try to play it through in your mind and maybe think of some examples of these different suffixes. Itis, be an inflammation of something. Oma is a tumor of, and I kind of remember this one because OMA is similar. I always think of it like you have the O and the M right here anyway, so that might help you to remember OMA and tumor. That helps me at least. I'm not sure if that's a good thing for you guys. And then otomy, which is the surgical cutting of. So differentiate between otomy and ectomy. Ectomy is removing something, and otomy is going to be the surgical cutting of something. So do you guys see the difference between those? They're very similar in their structure. The letters are pretty similar, but they have two different meanings. Everybody see that? Okay. Let's go back to our roots real fast. And you guys can follow along with me on the list, or you can watch me up here, whatever's easiest for you. So like I said before, when we have roots, they can't stand on their own. If we had a root word, like we do so much in English, then those are going to be able to stand on their own. So we have cardio. You guys think of like a cardio workout. So that's going to be something that gets your heart moving pretty fast. So cardio is always referring to your heart. Cranio is referring to your skull. So you think of the word cranium, that has to do with your skull. Gastro is your stomach. Glossa is your tongue. So maybe you can think of some examples of just ways to remember these. So glossa is your tongue. Glottis, your larynx. So remember I gave you the example of epiglottis, so it's on your larynx. Opia is your vision. I think of, when I have the O right here, think of like your eyes, so the O. And we also have odo, which is a little bit different because it's referring to your ears. So it's not the first thing I would think that it's talking about, but your odo is your ears. Osteo is your bones. And then nephro is going to be your kidneys. So I know this is a lot to take in, but we're going to have plenty of time to study and try to figure out some combinations of the different prefixes, suffixes, and roots. So one thing that we need to mention when we're putting them together, they don't always contain the entire piece. So the entire prefix or the entire suffix or even the entire root word is not always present when we combine them. The ending or the spelling might change. They might be like missing a letter in the middle or adding something at the end to make it an actual word. So some examples would be hypogastric. If you put hypo and gastro together, you would think it was just hypogastro, but we actually add an IC at the end to make it hypogastric. Epicranial instead of epicranio. These are just different things that, like, when you experiment with it, you maybe can look it up online and see if you have the right terminology. Osteectomy. So remember, the ectomy is going to be the removal of, or the otomy is the surgical cutting. So osteectomy would be the removal of bones. Because we have the osteo, and this is where, so you have your osteo, and then the ectomy. So osteo would be your root, but notice when we put them together, we lose the O. Everybody see that? And it's tricky. Sometimes when you put them together, maybe they don't look right, or you want to, like I said, if you want to look it up online, maybe if you're trying to figure these out, that'll help you also. So glotitis, not glostistis, which is kind of a weird word and hard to say. So you have the glottis, which refers to your larynx, and then the itis would be the inflammation of. When you put those together, you're losing the S. Okay? So now we're going to take some time for you all to practice and study. So I have a little activity, like a little worksheet for you with a bunch of different combinations of all of our prefixes, suffixes, and roots. So if you all need to use whatever method is going to be best for you to remember these roots, prefixes, and suffixes, and pay special attention to what they mean. So I have asked you all, if you want to use this particular sheet to study with, go ahead and underline the prefixes and suffixes that you see in these words, circle the roots, and then do your best to define those by your chart that I've given you. Okay? So I'm going to give you all maybe about 6 minutes or so to study, and then we'll go over the answers. If underlining and circling, sorry, I didn't mean to scare you. If underlining and circling isn't going to be super helpful for you, then you totally do whatever is going to be best for you to remember the defining parts of these different prefixes. Yeah, I leave it. Good.
Would this be the root word and then would be this is the suffix?
Yes.
So what is that?
Nephrin.
Yeah.
So let's look right here. So nephro is going to be pertaining to the kidneys. So if you have a nephrectomy,
It's a root of the kidneys.
yes, that's correct.
On this first one, there's diplo and then opiate. And diplo ends with an O and opiate begins with an O. How do you distinguish between where the prefix ends and where the next one starts? That particular one.
That one's a little bit tricky because they do have the same letter. I think as long as you have the definition of the term, you should be fine, because either way, if you decide to separate it between the diplo and then pia, or if you just decide to separate it between diplo and opia, you're still going to have the same definition. So I wouldn't worry too much about that. But it's a great question. we're losing the O.
Okay.
But it's still the same root of the O to O, which would take years. Question? Nick? No? So if you finish, you might want to take a little bit more time to study the different prefixes, roots, and suffixes because we are going to have a quiz in a second. Are you good? All right, Sean thinks he's ready. I'm sure he is.
Still have ways to go.
All right, you're good. I'll give you time to finish.
Oh, thanks.
As long as it doesn't take a really long time. Just trying to help you remove this. Everybody good?
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, do you guys want to go over any of this before we take our quiz, or do you guys feel pretty good about it? All right. I'm going to give you a quiz. Let's turn your charts and your little worksheets over. This is just a 9-question quiz that breaks down each of the prefixes, roots, and suffixes that are listed.